Welcome along to Film Talk. I'm Richard Edwards, and I'm delighted to say we're joined yet again by the wonderful Mark Prest. Mark, welcome back to Film Talk.
Hello, Richard. Good to be here.
Lovely to see you again. And today we're talking about one of our absolute favourite Roger Moore movies of all time, also starring Hildegard Neal. It is the absolute classic from 1970, directed by Basil Dearden, The Man Who Haunted Himself. Roger Moore from The Man Who Haunted Himself. Please don't drive like that at home. It's you want to be driving a lot more carefully than that, but it is the crux of this film. I mean, it is one of your and my favourite Roger Moore movies, isn't it? I mean, why is it so special to you?
Well, it's certainly, I obviously liked Roger very much in The Saint, and it was just after The Saint this film was made and came out. But obviously with him taking in the roles for James Bond, I was looking at what were the movies he'd made before James Bond, and I became interested in his catalogue, and I stumbled across this movie. I think actually I saw it on television for the very first time, and it struck me as being a really good film, good psychological thriller, good cast, well made. And I found it quite exciting, actually. And for its time, really had a sense of, thriller about it. And for me, I think Roger played the parts, which is the benefit he had. He could play two parts, which stretched his abilities as an actor, which I know that he wanted to embrace that when he made the film.
It's a real shift change for him as he'd moved away from The Saint, which he'd done for 7 or 8 years, over 100 episodes of The Saint, and he really wanted to be a different character. I mean, Crossplot, which was also produced by Bob Baker and was the guy behind The Saint as well, was an attempt to move away from that character and establish him more as a film star. But I think this really achieved it because it was such a unique performance and such a different style of film and subject for him to take on.
Yes, absolutely. And from what I understand is that it had a very minimal budget, this movie, and it really got the green lights because of Roger's involvement. He obviously liked the story very much. He liked the script, and as I said, he liked the opportunity of playing two parts, although obviously didn't get paid for playing two parts, which I know he made a joke of that later in his life. But it was a very different character to what he'd been playing previously as Simon Templar.
So Roger plays Pelham, a businessman he's a senior director at a marine company based in central London. Yes. And he's driving home one night along the M4, and then suddenly his mind is taken over by, you kind of sense it's his other personality. It's
alter ego.
The good Pelham, the bad Pelham.
Yes.
And then he starts driving in this really crazy way we've just seen in the clip a moment ago. And then there's a road accident. And somehow during the operation, both Pelhams emerge and he literally haunts himself because he's going about his daily business. And people are saying, but you just beaten me at snooker, or weren't you downstairs having... And he's also following himself around. And then there's this big deal going on where there's a takeover for the marine company, and Pelham seems to be, is he for it or against it? Who's he having a conversation with or not having? And it's all of this psychological thriller, and it comes to a very dramatic climax at the end. And a really original story, I think, and a great way for Roger to show diversity and breadth, almost depth to his capability beyond playing that simple eyebrow Simon Templar character.
No, I totally agree with you, actually, Richard. It's and I'm not just saying that. It really did sort of stretch his acting abilities. I think the premise of it was probably a split personality in reality, although probably back in the 70s people didn't really understand that. But I think that was the gist of it. I know that there was 2 heartbeats seen on the operating table after he had his accident, which added a little bit of sort of tension to the film. But it's two very different characters.
It did maintain great pace all the way through, though. You felt you were carried along, assuming you could suspend your disbelief and get into the premise
Yes.
of these two characters and personalities. Which, well, if you couldn't, why are you watching the film? Because that's what it's about. So assuming you accept, and then you follow it up, it did move really, really fast, I thought. I mean, apart from that laggy bit in the middle, it kind of had great pace all the way through and great drama and tension.
Yeah, so what I really like is that they use a lot of the proper scenes, as in like normal traffic. Where they go to the snooker hall, they're actually using a proper snooker hall. The barbers, very different for television and films of that era, which were consistently using of stage props and back projection for a lot of the stills. And there's a little bit of that, but the majority of the film is kind of like a raw live movie,
authentic locations. Yeah.
Do you, sir? My hair. But I did your hair yesterday, Mr. Pelham. Yesterday?
I thought the cast was very impressive. Hildegard Neal, it says introducing Hildegard Neal, so I guess that must have been her first film. Wasn't she married to Brian Blessed? Someone told me 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And lovely, attractive woman, very attractive, and played a good part in this. Great character, actually. Not knowing which way to go, because she's seen another side to Pelham. He's obviously this sort of rather stiff city gent most of the time, and this alter ego is actually somebody that adds a bit of
pizzazz. Who does visit one night?
Yes,
and the next morning she's
delighted.
She quite likes the new Pelham. What do you think they were up to? I don't. Well, let's not speculate. And of course, Anton Rogers. Some will know him for Fresh Fields, the kind of sitcom from ITV, but a lot of film work that he's done over the years. So not just The Man Who Haunted Himself, but what was it, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, we were saying earlier?
Yes,
and many other film roles too. So a great character actor.
Absolutely. And Freddie Jones is in this movie as well.
Yes, Freddie Jones.
Who's a great character, a great friend. Well, unfortunately, he's passed away now, but a great friend of yours as well. Knew him very well indeed. And great character by the sound of it.
Yeah, and Thorley Walters. He was placed as really kind of scatty, almost comical, kind of buffoony type character. And again, a similar kind of character in The Man Who Haunted Himself. So yeah, a really interesting cast.
It's probably worth mentioning the director, actually.
Yeah, Basil Dearden.
Yes, yeah. I mean, a classically trained technical director. Pretty tough with the actors as well. So he knew what he wanted, and he had a budget, and he was going to achieve that and achieve the film as well. But there's a tragic story to this as well, isn't there, Richard?
Well, yes, quite a spooky story. So we talked earlier about the erratic driving of the Pelham character on the M4, where he has the accident. And they filmed that in exactly the same spot where a few months later, Basil Dearden was driving down the M4, having finished a shoot, I think possibly on Persuaders.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was heading back home, off to visit someone, and had an accident himself in exactly the same spot, and was tragically killed in that accident. So a really shocking moment and a real turn. I mean, because Basil Dearden was an amazing director with a tremendous track record and history. And it just seemed really spooky that he would be killed himself in where they filmed that accident not that long before.
That leads me on to another thought, really, which was, I know that Brian Forbes, who was the main producer behind the movie, the film when it first came out didn't get the either the distribution or the support, the marketing, as it would have been in those days, to really get behind this film. And they felt quite disappointed by whatever that was, and, whatever that sort of influence was somewhere in the production, who didn't want this film to be a success.
I mean, he talks about that in the commentary for the DVD, doesn't he? There's a commentary with Sir Roger as well. And Brian was head of production at EMI at Elstree Studios. So he was responsible for green lighting so many, like Railway Children, for example, was one of his. And, he brought a lot of productions to Elstree and green lit a lot of productions, including The Man Who Haunted Himself. And he found that there was some kind of clash with someone higher up in EMI, and they weren't getting on, and was deliberately, he says, they were deliberately putting the kibosh on the success of a number of his films, and he felt that The Man Who Haunted Himself didn't get the same or the right level of sales and promotion that it should have done, and hence it didn't do as well at the box office as he thought it could have done. And it's only really through DVD that it's getting to the bigger audience that we think it deserved to have right from the start. But whatever format you're watching it on, I think we're both saying it's highly recommendable, well worth seeing.
Yes, absolutely. There's a question to pose at the end of the movie, which we were talking about earlier, which is, for you and for me, what would you prefer? Would you prefer dashing, sort of slightly nasty Pelham, or the weak, sort of in middle of the road, not a very engaging lover, husband? Well, which one do you think would have come through?
But you see, the original Pelham was more honest.
True.
And the new Pelham was quite a tricky character. In some ways, we're looking at the deal for the takeover.
Yes.
You know, and we see that. We get to that point at the end of the film because there's this really dramatic car chase. You know, new Pelham's gone to the house. Old Pelham arrives, and there's this face-off with the two Rogers.
Yes.
The two Pelhams together.
Yes.
Which is very cleverly shot, I thought. And then the old Pelham races out. The new Pelham chases, and there's an incident, and the two Pelhams come back together, but we don't know which one, the new Pelham or the old Pelham, the good Pelham or the bad Pelham, is the one that survived. Do you have a view which one you think it is?
Well, my view, I think, is that Hildegard Neal, I think she preferred the slightly racier Pelham, the slightly naughtier version. And actually, I'd probably agree with that. I think that's where I would go, that route as well. And hopefully he can modify his ways slightly and amalgamate the best of both characters.
It's interesting because when I watched it again yesterday in preparation for this, I watched that scene very closely because I know there's talk about which of the Pelhams was it that survived. And I watched it again and I thought, just looking at that scene, I had a sense it was the old Pelham that come back.
Yes. Yeah, it's sort of...
And so...
It leaves it open, very open.
It does, yes. I mean, if you listen to the commentary, both Roger and Brian have their own views on which one they think it is as well. So I'm sure it's not the question that's going to be keeping the nation awake tonight.
No.
But it'd be an interesting question to kick around sometime if you've got a few minutes.
Yes, good.
All in all, though, a fantastic film and highly recommended.
Absolutely. Yes. One of the best ones, certainly one of the best Rogers movies, definitely.
Do tell us what you think and leave some comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit that little bell icon to get a notification every time we release a new video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.